Hello and welcome. Today we are going to attempt to teach you how you can make this easy alpha bag. So this bag started with the Kumi again, but I failed to get any video of that as my wife just did them in a snap, and I never really think about that stuff as that's happening. Anyways, each one of those sets started out with 20 strings, and I intended to double them up, so I had to sort each time to make it 10 colors going to the left-hand side and 10 colors to the right. It's a bit time consuming, but it allows me to have my string doubled up and make the bag thicker and potentially last a bit longer. I started knotting in the traditional method, and I did all 5 of the loops prior to even getting started on the whole alpha thing. And despite the fact that on paper, when you do it where you just come down and then drop off the 2 strings and you come down and you drop off 2 more, on paper it looks pretty flat. But the reality is there is a slight curvature to the whole thing. And if you're one of those perfectionists who is all about like it has to be perfect, this might not be your method. For me, I think it gave it a little bit of a touch of character. There's a little touch of a curve there, and it kind of balances out over time. But you know, different people, different strokes, different folks. Anyways, the starting of it was in my mind a bit dicey because of the going around as an alpha. My concern was that if there was only one row going around to join all 5 of the loops together, that it would be a bit flopsy, a little bit difficult to work with. So I actually started out with a few. The lengths of how I did the colors, I just basically went a bit random. The first couple rows are nice and long, roughly 10 each. But after that, I just kind of picked strings based on how long they were, trying to always take a look at a group, figure out where I was kind of going with it, and then just take the longest one and then, make some knots with that. So, mind you, I can definitely see the possibility of a more structured kind of look for it, and maybe in the future we can look at that. But for this one, I did kind of just go with the random look. Now, the one thing that I kind of foresaw and I wanted to see what would come of it was where that one row joins up, or basically ends, and then you start into the next one. And what it does is it leaves like a gap where there should be a knot. And at first I was like, that's okay, because the next row, as long as I stack it over, kind of like the way that you would with, like, maybe if you've ever played with Legos, how you stack a bigger one across where the joint is and it makes it stronger. Yeah, so I kind of was doing that for a while. But then I got an idea, and that was to use this needle. Now with the needle, I could go in right where the knot that started the row, right at its base, and come out, and it pretty much covered the hole. It wasn't an actual knot in the wake of it or anything, but it sort of covered the hole, and it kind of drew things in closer, so it was much harder to notice. And I thought, that's it. This is the difference right here. But then I don't know. This whole project was about trying to problem solve for that. But now here's the way that I come up with that I did. Mind you, I was near the end of the bag, so there's not a lot of examples. But if you come in right here at the very base of it, and then you come through that first knot and bring the string out to the left, it really is almost as if it becomes a part of that knot, as if that whole row is joined perfectly. And surprisingly, the rows that did it, you can't spot them. They disappear. And the better I get, the more times I did it, the better I got at it, the more that was the truth. So hopefully you guys can use that and you guys can do some cool alpha stuff. Mind you, alpha is really not my thing. And I think I would have to say why is because you have to keep rotating the work way more often. I know a lot of people like to call it segment knotting. For me, it's just work on an area and get a large portion done before you have to actually rotate it to go do something else. And to me, that's just the natural way things should basically work. But whatever, if you want to give it a name or whatever, I guess segment knotting works. With this alpha, I was only able to do 1 or 2 rows at a time. And yeah, every, I don't know, couple minutes, you have to stop and kind of rotate it around so that way you can continue the work. And there's a whole process of how much that can kind of slow you down. So, do I like the overall look? Yeah, absolutely. I think this thing is gorgeous. But I'm not a huge fan of having to, basically stop progress just to be able to move the thing around. So if there was an easier way of doing it, and mind you, I ended up using a very skinny coffee bottle and then wrap some matted stuff around it with a bit of tape so that way it could kind of help speed up going around and give it a little bit of structure as I was working. But even that was, it was difficult to get the clip onto the matted part and it slowed everything down. So if you had something that you could work around, say maybe like a tin can or something that you could clip easily to your board, I would say that would probably make it go a whole lot faster, potentially. But then again, I mean, I started out with 100 strings. That was my intent, was just 100 strings, make it go, and see what comes of it. So in hindsight, maybe trying to go to a specific size that you have that you can clip to your easel might have worked better. So now, when it comes to the base, I brought it back to the same way it started, with 5 diamonds coming in. Now, there is something sort of weird about how that works. One side actually becomes bigger than the other, and some of the knots get very stretched out towards the end. But that said, it still seals it up rather well, and it gives it this really interesting look. So what I did was I was coming down each row and tying the knot to the next one over, and then those two kind of go to the inside, and so on until I reach the end and then turn it and go to the next one. I guess the pictures actually kind of show it better than I'm explaining this. So it's just a matter of I'm tying a regular half hitch just like we normally do. However, once all that's done, we then tie knots on the inside to help make sure that nothing can slip out of place, because the lark's head is, if you don't give it a square knot to hold it, it can slide. So there's each one of those is tied up on the inside as well. And then the very center is grouped together, and that goes into one great big knot. So that's how all of that worked out. As far as the strap went, because there had been 20 strings in each one of the kumis for the loop, the strap was actually made from 20 strands of similar colors. I didn't necessarily have as many colors because there's 100 in the other and only 20 here, but I picked out 20 colors that were actually in the bag to be part of the strap, and that's been kind of put through all of the loops, and that's what cinches it closed. As far as the size of this bag versus a lot of my other ones, it's actually bigger, and I don't really quite understand the nature of why alphas make the bag a bit bigger, but it absolutely does. I think it's got something to do with how the knots get kind of meshed over sideways, so what would normally be the length of it suddenly becomes its width. I think it has something to do with that, but I haven't really worked out the details of it. So overall, is this bag easy? Absolutely. You only have to really know the one knot to do it. Although I did, every time I started a row, I did a left and then a right. And then, you have to have that whole work the needle thing at the end, which I think anybody could pretty much figure that out. The base, again, I made it as easy as possible so that way you guys would be able to take from it and make your own. The alternative thing, base, I would think would be a lot of fun, would be to systematically tie one string over two, and then you would basically reduce the number of strings you were tying knots to and bring it in as a spiral. Or I guess if you were still doing it in rows like this, you could even make it something like a bullseye. So there's definite room for innovations still. If you guys are interested in seeing how some of the other ways of doing it, leave me some comments and buy some stuff in the shop, because these kind of projects, it cost me a bunch in strings. So if you guys really enthusiastically want to help support the channel, buying things in the shop, sharing the videos, liking, subscribing, all these things can help me out. So until next time, don't get your strings in a bunch.